Any views or opinions expressed on KUR are not necessarily those of Kutztown University, Kutztown University Student Government, Kutztown University Student Services Incorporated, KUR staff and management, or other affiliated organizations.
I'm Steve Maugeri, host of KU Live. Tune in every Tuesdays at 2 p.m. for all things Kutztown University. We will discuss everything ranging from school news, sports, and upcoming events, along with frequent appearances from student government to discuss new policies. We will also have members of ACE, the Association of Campus Events, to come in weekly to discuss what new activities are coming to the university. Tune in to 1670 AM or listen to us online at www.kutztown.edu/KUR or on your smartphone by downloading the TuneIn app. You can also listen to us via any phone by calling 610-465-7860. KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University. KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University. KUR Kutztown. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of KU Live. I'm your host, Steve Maugeri, as always. The time right now is about 2:02 p.m. Eastern Time, and we have a very, as my producer would put it, historic show for you today. We have a guest, Ms. Leah Cassellia, in charge of from the Office of Student Involvement, will be coming in to speak about a new action called Turbo Vote and what it means for us, and also to talk about the topic of student voting as well. And in an election where there's many implications surrounding the education system and us students, on the balance, then it's a very important topic. And also remaining on the topic of voting, we also have someone from 3,000 miles overseas. We have someone, an alum from 1992. His name is Kendall Emerson Ross. He's a KU alum, and he lives in Scotland. And with all that's been going on with Scotland and all the secession movements and everything else, it's just been a lot going on. And we get, in essence, our own correspondent in Scotland, our own KU correspondent in there to talk about what it's been like with all the secession movements. But we have our first guest. We have Ms. Leah Cassellia from the Office of Student Involvement here to speak with us about Turbo Vote. First off, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join us, as always. And now we'll just get started. We're here to talk about Turbo Vote. For those who don't know, what is Turbo Vote?
Sure. Turbo Vote is a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization that is based in Brooklyn, New York, that was started by students.
They just put that on. There you go.
Okay.
I apologize.
That was started by students that graduated from Harvard University, and their goal is to make voting as easy as renting a DVD from Netflix. And so they have approached campuses all over the nation and gotten a commitment to working with them to try to get students registered to vote.
That's great. And that one of the most common, I can call it excuses, is why students can't vote is the registration process is a little too long and tedious, but there's no better way to put it from what I've heard about. And I've done it myself. It takes, it's like you said, renting a movie on Netflix. And
right.
For those who don't know, just if you could maybe sum it up, how do you use Turbo Vote?
Sure. So you go to a website, and thanks to the funding that we get from Student Government Board that's funded through student activity fees, we have a co-branded website with Turbo Vote, and so it's kutztown.turbovote.org. And when students go to that specific website, you'll see the KU logo on there, and then they complete some very basic brief information, name, address, their mailing address, and then their reason for using the service, so that they can indicate specifically whether they're looking to get an absentee ballot, whether they're changing their address, whether they're registering to vote for the first time, and also it allows them to sign up for email and text reminders.
Well, that's great. And nothing more convenient than email, and especially text reminders for students. That's great. And as we know, voting for students, sometimes the numbers are a little lower for around this age group, sometimes due to just knowledge on the subject or just basically, indifference. And it's something I believe all students should do, especially with, all of the implications on the education system hanging in the balance with this governor election. How important is it for students to vote, in your opinion?
Sure, it's mission critical. So we are trying our best to help students become not only registered to vote, but also to become informed voters. So through their sign up through Turbo Vote, along with those reminders to get to the polls, it also is pointing them to resources so they can become educated about those, about the candidates, about the races, about what the key issues are. We also have an updated website off of the KU website, which is the www.kutztown.edu/vote. And that's also a great place for students and actually anyone to find out information about elections in the district in which they are registered.
Of course, absolutely. As in, this is something we need to know about when you get older. And if you want to really, take it from a critical thinking standpoint, it's good to know about both sides so you make the best decision in your own mind. And that's something that I think is really great for students to do. But there's been, it's been well documented. Some students just don't feel like it impacts them, which it can. And they feel, it's just one vote won't, make an impact when it can at times. Mm-hmm. Why do you believe students don't vote?
Well, there's a lot of statistical information and data that tells us why students don't vote. Some of the leading reasons are they have questions about the process. They don't exactly know how to vote, or and they also are sometimes not educated about the process of getting registered to vote, which is, although simple to a certain extent, it has a couple of steps to it, and there's not that immediate gratification that sometimes students are looking for. So, for example, there's a deadline in order to get registered to vote, and that for this year is October 6th. So that voter registration deadline is long before Election Day, which is Tuesday, November 4th. And so sometimes when it comes to an election day, in this case, Tuesday, November 4th, there may be students or people in general who are looking to go and vote, and they are not registered, but they needed to have done it about a month beforehand. So the process is lengthy. In addition, the other leading reasons for students who are not voting is they don't know what they're voting for. They're not educated on the issues, so they're not familiar.
And some also aren't, some just don't have any general interest in it.
Yeah, some just don't have any interest at all. That's absolutely right.
Right. And that's something that, I believe that, we always, when we have the opportunity to vote, we should. That's our right as, just Americans in general, because my contention is, and I'm sure people share this sentiment, is that if you don't vote, then you're basically giving more power to the people up above. And if people don't care who runs it, then that's going to turn into, I don't know, fascism or some form of government we don't want. I'm not going to, speculate too much into that. But that's something that's why, especially students, you got to vote early, and then, when you're younger.
What we know statistically about students, citizens that are ages 18 to 24, if they are registered to vote, the population that is registered to vote, 87% of them make it to the polls. So that's why we're trying to make a very concerted effort of getting students actually registered to vote, so then it will then lead to them getting to the polls.
Terrific. And I'm sure aside from TurboVote, I'm sure there's more you have to do. You have to promote it. What have you and the rest of the Office of Student Involvement been doing to promote and encourage students to vote and to register to vote?
Sure. Well, today is a great day to ask that. It's National Voter Registration Day, and we co-hosted with Student Government Board National Voter Registration Day event in the multipurpose room from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is when we had information available for students, but also computer stations that students came in and were able to actually use the TurboVote technology.
That's great. Yeah, and you also, right upstairs in the sub, you have welcome other people asking, hey, have you registered to vote?
Exactly.
Yes or no? They're just getting it, making sure people are aware of it. Mm-hmm. And another topic I thought we should bring up is that, one of the conveniences, sometimes people can't make it to voting booths, and some students don't have cars. And the issue that I know President Joe Scaboria mentioned to me last night was that he said that the Maxatoni Township the voting booths have been moved to the Maxatoni Township building, which is further off campus. It used to be in the opaque field house. And do you believe that's inconvenient for students that can't make it to that?
I know it's inconvenient for students.
Because not all of us have cars.
Right, exactly. So one thing that Student Government Board is working with the faculty on also is providing transportation to the polling location. So on Election Day, Tuesday, November 6th, they will be providing transportation by way of bus to the polling location throughout the day.
That's great, because then it's like, okay, you're registered and you can easily get there. You have reasonable means of transportation to do it. That's, you should vote.
Right. And I meant to say Tuesday, November 4th. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, and one thing, actually, student government, I'm sure that, I don't know if they've mentioned this to you, they're going to walk, I believe it's 5 miles towards the township building in order to send a very, exaggerated message that the booth is too far away. Right. Do you what are your thoughts on this?
I think that's a great illustration of the challenges that students will face in trying to get to the polls. And I'm glad that Student Government Board is rallying around this issue. It came to the forefront after the 2012 election, which was the first year that we had Turbo Vote. And through those efforts, we registered just under 2,000 students registered to vote. And I think the change in the polling location is a direct result of the voter turnout on the part of our students.
Right. That's great, though. It shows that I don't know why they would, if you get 2,000 more voters, they'd move it. It's as if they're trying. That's a lot of President Maugeri has said that he believes that that's voter suppression. And I agree with him. That's something, if you're trying to make it more difficult and make it almost a journey to vote, then and you're trying to get people to just, stop. And that fits into the parameters of voter suppression in my mind, and I'm sure his too. And another thing I wanted to ask is, just out of pure opinions, why do you believe the voting booths were moved from the field house?
I think if you look at the map for the districts that surround Kutztown, you could see that this voting district specifically turned in the Democratic direction versus Republican. And you can see that all of the surrounding areas were very much opposite. And someone who is really a great resource to talk to about this is a professor that we have here, Professor Len Barish.
Professor Barish, yes. I actually I wanted him to come on, but he has class today. And
that's okay.
And I'm sure we could have him on another time. He's very passionate about this subject.
He is extremely passionate.
That's great. Yeah, but it's true. That's something this is I believe we talked about this in the radio meeting today. It's had a whole map of a survey. This is a relatively Lehigh Valley, I believe it's relatively Democratic.
Right.
So that's something, if one party's going to vote against it, well, they can't beat the mass majority of people voting for the moving of the polls. But I personally don't agree with that. I believe that, the field house is a much larger venue, and the argument is that there's parking and all that. I'm like, yeah, but students, they can walk. Some of them can walk. A majority of, 45% of students live on campus. They can just walk from their dorms. And others, it's open all day. So in my mind, it's if you, don't vote, then you're rationalizing. I just think that you need to realize that this is your country you live in, and this is, surrounding our state. A lot of financial implications behind that. But okay, I'll end you on, a little more expansion on this topic we broached in our discussion today. Do you believe that students around 18 to 22 years old are usually mature and educated enough to vote, or do you feel like they just vote almost without knowing enough?
I think the students who end up being registered to vote do choose to educate themselves and are educated voters. I think they are very aware of the issues, and we're doing a good job of providing resources to those students who are looking to know more. Very
convenient. Okay, and just one more thing. For our listeners, how do people find out about Turbo Vote? Where can they find it?
Sure, they can go to our co-branded site. It's http://Kutztown.turbovote.org.
Okay, so it's http:// I think I see that on every URL. So
yeah, just checking, but don't put the www. That's the point. Don't put the www.
I see. Thank you very much. Okay, so no www. Okay.
Exactly. So Kutztown.turbovote.org.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. That was Ms. Leah Cassellia from the Office of Student Involvement. A very informative interview, and thank you very much again. And stay tuned. You're welcome. And stay tuned for more KU Live.
It's Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us.
We've all probably wondered what lies beyond our small, self-contained little world. Hello, my name is Luzaida Bonilla, and this is Exobiology. The question many have pondered is whether there is intelligent life beyond Earth. Some scientists and philosophers have speculated about life on other planets for centuries, and today the search for life is a major driving factor in space exploration. Signs of possible life have been found in material from outer space, and much research has been dedicated to proving the existence of life on Mars, such as SETI. SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, is the program entirely dedicated to finding and establishing communication with extraterrestrials. Although contact with aliens has not yet been made, technology today may make it a reality in the near future. In the search for ET, most search strategies have concentrated on radio or laser signals. Astronomers are using Dyson spheres, infrared signals, and laser communications. Kent Cullers, the director of SETI Research and Development at the SETI Institute in California, has been searching for radio signals from intelligent aliens for more than 20 years. In 2002, Cullers had more ways to listen to the stars thanks to the Alum Testable Array, aka ATA. The ATA is located at Hat Creek Radio Observatory in California and was founded by Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft. It consists of approximately 350 satellite dishes with a combined collecting area of 2.47 acres. This design allows researchers to electronically combine the ATA's output in various ways. The instrument employs programmable chips and software for signal processing, which gives the array the flexibility of looking at a SETI target star while simultaneously observing another astronomical object elsewhere in the sky. Astronomers are still listening for any kind of noise that could indicate another world trying to contact us. It is true, we can never be completely sure that we won't have extraterrestrial visitors tomorrow, but for today, we can be confident aliens have not come yet.
Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us. Stay tuned to KUR for more telescopic topics, and for more information, or to hear this segment again, click on the Telescopic Topics icon on the KUR website at www.kutztown.edu/KUR. Telescopic Topics is a production of the KU Physical Sciences Department and is recorded by KU astronomy students in the studios of KUR. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
One 1-800-222-1222. 1-800-222-1222. If you think it might be poison, then the first thing you should do is call 1-800-222-1222. Poison can be anything you're not supposed to take. Antifreeze, pesticide, the wrong drug by mistake. If you breathe a nasty chemical, been bitten by a snake, call the Poison Control Center hotline. We're here for you night or day.
For a poison or drug emergency at home or at work, just call the Poison Control Center hotline. We're here 24/7 with the expert help you need. Free and confidential. Even if you think it's a false alarm, call
1-800-222-1222. 1-800-222-1222. If you think it might be poison and you don't know what to do, call 1-800-222-1222.
A message from your Poison Control Center.
KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University. KUR Kutztown. Hey everyone, welcome back to KU Live. The time right now is about 2:20 Eastern Time, and we just had a very excellent interview from a member of the Office of Student Involvement, Ms. Leah Cassellia, who came in to talk about a new movement they're using called Turbo Vote, which helps expedite the process of students registering and voting. And we also talked about the topic as a whole of student voting, and it was very informative, and it sounds like it's a really useful tool to use. It makes registering for voting much easier, and it really also, helps promote the idea that, if it doesn't matter if you're 18, or 38, you should vote because that's your right as a citizen of this country, and especially for students to vote. And I know I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, but it's something really important because with all of the implications regarding the education system with Governor Corbett, and I'm not going to dive in too much into this, but it's something that we should really take into account when voting, because whether it's Wolf or Corbett, one of these two, there will be some changes to the education system, especially us college students at a state system, which is, funded partially by the government. So that's something we should all take into account. And, just my advice, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir again, do your homework. Don't just, Don't fall victim to the autokinetic effect and just follow what other people are doing. Do your homework and vote for who you believe is best, because they say one vote, doesn't make much of a difference, but it does, and it's something that really should. And I have to say, Mike, that was a very, very informative interview, and it's a really important topic. Students, I feel, just there's a never-ending list of excuses as to why they can't vote, but now this makes it so much easier.
Well, yeah, I think what it boils down to is the founders of Turbo Vote got tired of the I don't have time excuse anymore. And we live in a very instantaneous world where college students want everything like this. And going to a post office and mailing in a voter registration form is just too 1990s or even early 2000s for students anymore. And so they just had to come up with a way to make it instantaneous. And I think they finally did it. Now there's absolutely no excuse. And I always, I rant a lot on my personal Facebook page. If you don't vote, you have just keep your mouth shut. You have absolutely nothing to say about anything because you didn't drop your opinion. So it's
your thoughts are discredited if you're not even gonna.
Exactly.
This is the chance to voice your opinion.
Right.
I don't think you're the right guy for the job because. Why? And here's why I'm voting for this person.
Exactly.
It's
if you say that that I didn't vote because it wasn't worth it.
hogwash.
Hogwash. I mean, add up all the people that say that, which is probably well into the thousands, if not millions, and that group of people with that attitude could change the course of the future.
Right.
If they would just change that attitude.
Whether it's municipally or nationally. And this is something, just because it's not the presidential election, it's still important. This is us, and we're at a state institution of higher education.
Actually, my opinion on it is it might be more important because, we all get so caught. Not saying that the presidential election is not important. It's hugely important. But if you think about it, the president's kind of a figurehead sort of thing, whereas the governor is, these are the guys that are reporting to the higher realms of government. These are the guys that are actually doing stuff that affects you on a day-to-day basis. This is, I think, personally more important than a presidential election.
In this era right now, for sure. It's something that could change, it could change tuition costs. It could change, how our university functions, what we're allowed to have. It's a lot of monetary implications, and that's something that I want to hear everyone else's thoughts. Our viewers, we had a lot of guests on before. We got about 7 minutes. Anyone, feel free to call in. The number is 610-683-4859. Did I get that right?
Yep, you got that right.
Yep. I sometimes I use the KUR studio line, but it's 610-683-4859. Call in. I want to hear your thoughts. The lines are open. I want to hear. Here's the question I'm going to throw out. I mean, do you think that college students don't really feel like voting, and if so, why?
Okay,
that's what I want to hear from you guys, because this is it's something we're trying to get. We want to interact with you guys, and we want to hear your thoughts. If you have an idea for the show, whether it's that, we just want to hear from you. We love to talk to the people that listen to the show, and this is a big issue going on at the school right now that could affect the whole university. It could affect the students, which affects the faculty. It's very important, and it's something that we really should be talking more about. And also, I remember Mike, he also brought up another great point. Is that another huge proponent for this is Professor Leonard Barish, and I know him very well. He's my electronic media professor, and I've talked to him. We've done news packages about this voting before, and I believe he'd be a really good person to bring on maybe next week to discuss this. We could pre-record his class at this time.
Right.
Because he's a guy who has just really good knowledge on this and really doesn't – let's put it this way. He does not like people that say, oh, I don't have time, or, here, I can't vote because of this. If you want to voice your political opinions, vote. Then we'll listen to you. You have some credibility. But it's silly. But hey, it's just the world we live in right now.
And this is probably a good dovetail into your next guest, which we hope to have on in about 5 or 10 minutes.
Was about to bring that up.
Yeah. You want to do it? It's your show. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, we're having a very special guest coming in, an alum from the class of 1992 and a KUR alum as well. His name is Kendall Emerson Ross, and we're going to get a phone call from all the way about 3,000 miles around that across the Atlantic from Scotland. And what town in Scotland is he from?
Wow. He said this numerous times, and I always forget. I know it's in the more country part of Scotland,
right,
the more rural areas. But he's moved around a lot. He's an interesting fella. But I mean, Scotland. I mean, what's going on in Scotland? And Scotland's considered a democratic country. They had something huge happen in the past week.
Right. It's the the secession groups. Right now there was a vote, and I believe 55% said that they will not secede, and 45% said they wanted to. But the big topic here, which we're going to probably talk to him about, is that they believe there may have been some voter fraud. Some people may have, intercepted the votes and then put in switched it up from a no to a yes, and they're trying to start what you told me, a grassroots campaign to revote.
Yeah.
It's just, will that be national or only certain areas?
Well, I think national. I think that they're trying to make it national. See, that's another, and we can dovetail this back into what you just said. That's another excuse I sometimes hear from students. Well, why should I vote? Because the powers that be will probably rig it anyway. Well, that partially true, maybe, perhaps, but then that's more reason for you to get involved in the system and change the system, and that's what he's trying to do. He thinks that there was something fishy going on, and they're working to get that looked into and recounted or revoted. So, again, that's not an excuse either, that the powers that be will just do what they want. I mean, you got to be involved at all levels of the voting process.
Right. There's a counter-argument for every one of these, excuses. And
right.
And I don't believe that either, saying, oh, someone's going to get it, caught. That I could get into a whole thing of breaking down their logic, but that's something that, that I just will never believe. But yeah, that's going to be very interesting, and it's I just hope we can get him on.
We're going to try to get him on at 2:30, which is 7:30 Scotland time, so it's early evening over there as the sun's going down. And if we don't get him right at 2:30, it might be around 2:35. But we just spoke to him this morning. He's very excited, and he's going to be there on the air one way or the other. So
right, I mean it's amazing that someone from KU is all the way over in Scotland, and so just. While we're waiting for him, what was he like? What did he do in his time here at KUR?
Well, he was actually involved in the predecessor of KUR. Back then it was called WRKU. It was a little college radio station in the basement of Rothermere Hall in the late 80s and early 90s. And it was a small group of Souderton High School graduates. Souderton's down near Philadelphia, and they remained friends over the years. And one of them became a professor here at KU. He's no longer here. He went to another school. One of them, I think she works in an insurance company, and another one of them is Kendall, and he's just your just earth-loving type of easygoing guy. Just likes to travel the world and do new adventures. And Scotland was calling him, and that's where he wound up. So
that's amazing. Okay, well, we'll just hang on for him for a little while. Meantime, we'll take a quick commercial break. So stay tuned for more KU Live.
Okay.
Looking for exceptional research and fieldwork opportunities? The Chincoteague Bay Field Station is an environmental education facility located on the eastern shore of Virginia. We offer a variety of college courses each summer ranging from geology and biology to literature and marine science. For years, Kutztown University students have come to the field station to participate in cutting-edge research and gain practical experiences that help them secure a job in their field. Find out how you can get involved today at cbfieldstation.org. That's cbfieldstation.org. Newsbreak is a student-run news program produced right here at Kutztown University. It features stories that affect the Lehigh Valley as well as Berks County weather and KU sports. You can watch on Service Electric Berks and on Kutztown University campus on Channel 24 and on Hometown Utilicom Channel 28. KU TV Newsbreak. What are you watching?
Did you know that 80% of KU students don't binge drink?
Hanging posters again? Do you think that poster is really true?
Yes, it is true. I am a KU health ambassador and familiar with the audit. KU students participate in alcohol screening each year. We use the Alcohol Use Disorder Identification Test. It is a simple way to screen and identify people who are at risk of developing alcohol problems. We have learned that the majority of students are taking care of business and focusing on academics.
You know, most of my friends don't drink, so I guess what this poster is saying is true.
Would you like to get a group of friends together for a bite to eat?
Sounds great. Text me later.
Kutztown Living, Neighbor to Neighbor.
Funded by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
So we've got our neighbor Paul coming over tonight for a barbecue, which is why I prepared a delicious lemon rosemary steak marinade from my special collection of old family recipes. To make sure the steaks are extra, extra, extra tender, I left them marinating out on the counter overnight, just like Nana used to.
Maria may mean well, but without food safety, it never ends well. Always thaw or marinate foods in the refrigerator at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below, or you could make your friends and family really sick. Maria's neighbor Paul didn't think twice about the steak he ate until he was presenting his company's financial forecast to the board. That's when a sudden bout of food poisoning made it explicitly clear that profits weren't the only thing on the rise. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov. You'll learn the right steps as Maria does everything wrong. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University. KUR Kutztown. Hey everyone, welcome back to KU Live. Time right now is about 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And right now we're just waiting for our next guest, KU alum Kendall Emerson Ross, who is calling us all the way over from Scotland to talk about, just his works with and his thoughts on the whole voting issue there and the possible secession that almost happened. And that's going to be very informative. And the fact that we get to have our own very own KUR correspondent down over in Scotland is just really cool. And I'm looking forward to that. But he's in the middle of something right now, so we'll just get back to our topic. The theme that we really wanted today's show to be about was about student voting and, voting as a whole and how it's your right and how if you don't vote, it doesn't matter what your rationale is. All your opinions are completely discredited because if you don't vote, then that means you don't really care. You don't really care. You're contradicting yourself. But that's something I really want to just hit home is that, students, it doesn't matter if you're young, you have the right to vote. There's a reason they make an age minimum. It means that they expect you're an adult now, you should be able to vote. And that's something I really would love our students to do is to just vote more. And I have no statistics, but I've encountered a fair share of people that have every excuse you can think of. And right now with TurboVote, a website started by the Office of it was started by Harvard University, but it's now we have acquired it at Kutztown University, and our Office of Student Involvement is running it. It is a way to really make the process a lot faster and more convenient. And like my producer said, college students live in this instantaneous world where everything has to just happen quickly. And this is, a prime example of that. If this is a way to quickly get yourself registered and to vote, and it's something that you really should do with all the implications we have coming up. So once again, I'm just going to ask, I would love to hear from you, the listeners. What are your thoughts on student voting? Is there too much of it? Do you feel students, it's too hard for them to vote? They're afraid? Are they just not educated enough in the whole process? I'd love to hear your thoughts. The number is 610-683-4859. That is 610-683-4859. We would love to hear your thoughts because in a school like this, I remember the presidential election, voting, that was a big issue. The coverage was, of course, more national because it was the presidential election. It had a lot more implications. But something Mike talked about, and he said this before our last commercial break, was how, and I agree with him, this is probably a little larger because of how this current governor election and the debates were last night, they have a lot of consequences or implications that are going to surround the education system, very, monetarily with funding, Funding was lowered last year in education, and this pertains to us, especially as students here at KU and PASHE schools as a whole, because state schools like us are, we're funded partially through Harrisburg, and with less money, that's going to lead to an increase in tuition, which potentially could lead to some students having to pay more loans, and we know compound interest is not very friendly, and it could lead to, less students matriculating here because just it's unaffordable or it's too expensive for them, and that's something that we really should address and something that's going to be one of the main talking points, I'm sure, in the first debates. And I did miss the first debate last night, and I heard that, that Governor Corbett was a little defensive because he knew he would have to defend himself. But that's something that I'd probably have to watch myself. But just number 610-683-4859. We'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on student voting or just voting from around this age group? I'm 22 years old. I'm young. And I voted 2 years ago for the presidential election. I'm going to vote for this because I believe it's just our right. And I want to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on student voting or voting from this age group? We'd love to hear from you. The number again is 610-683-4859. And soon we'll have our next guest, an alum from, going to be talking to us from Scotland, Mr. Kendall Emerson Ross, who will be discussing what's going on with the voting issues in Scotland. And there's a lot going on right now. From what I've read, in the past couple of days that there was actually yesterday, they reached a final vote where 55% voted that they do not secede and 45% voted that they do secede. And the big issue here is that a lot of people think that there is some conspiracy theorists believe this. I don't know if you can call them that, but they believe that there was some voter fraud where some people, somehow found the petitions and changed their votes from yes to no or no to yes or something like that. And they're starting a grassroots campaign. Mr. Ross is part of it. They're starting a campaign to revote, to make sure that they get all the proper votes in, that it's, factually correct, so they get the best result. And I look forward to hearing from him. I'd like to hear what his stance is. Does he believe, that Scotland should secede or remain with the UK? It's been all over the news, and there's been a lot of reverberations from it. And a lot of people are also thinking that, this might lead to other countries pushing for independence, because if all it takes sometimes is just one country at times. If you push for secession, then others may follow suit thinking it may work, because a lot of people think that Scotland is more of it's kind of like a state in the United States, so it could work independently, but obviously 55% of the country thought differently, and because of that now the country is remaining with the UK for now. But we're just waiting. We would love to hear what Mr. Ross has, because he's right now our correspondent from Scotland, to hear what's going on there, but we're just waiting. He's very busy right now. But I'll just throw out the number again. I would love to hear from our listeners. The number is 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859. Love to hear your thoughts. If you want to talk about, just have a question regarding Scotland's secession and student voting, what's going on with the elections here. There's a lot to talk about. We would love to hear from you. But meantime, we're just waiting on Mr. Ross. And another thing I wanted to just bring up was that Mr. Ross also was a KUR alum. We talked about this in our previous show, and I'm sort of repeating myself just to make sure that our listeners can be caught up, that he was an alum. He used to work with KUR before it was known as KUR. Just a couple friends from his hometown outside of Philadelphia worked with it and kept in touch. And it's great that he's keeping in touch with us, to be so far away and to still remember after all these years. I believe it was 22 years since he graduated from here, and still keep in touch with it. Shows it how great this radio station is for him and how much it meant to him. But we're just waiting right now, and I believe Mike will be talking to him very soon. And there's definitely a lot to talk about. Just 610-683-4859. I would love to hear from our listeners on what our thoughts are on this. And in a few minutes, we'll be speaking with Mr. Ross, and I'm personally looking forward to this, because he's an alum who has a lot to talk about, and we get firsthand knowledge on this. But for the meantime, we'll just head to a quick commercial break, so stay tuned for more KU Live.
¿Sabía usted que el 80% de los estudiantes de KU no beben en exceso?
Colgando carteles de nuevo. ¿Crees que ese cartel es realmente cierto?
Sí, es cierto. Soy una embajadora de la salud de KU y estoy familiarizada con el audit. Estudiantes de KU participan en el cribado de alcohol cada año. Utilizamos los exámenes de identificación de desorden del uso de alcohol. Esta es una forma sencilla de detectar e identificar las personas que están en riesgo de desarrollar problemas con el alcohol. Hemos aprendido que la mayoría de los estudiantes están tomando el cuidado de su negocio y centrarse en lo académico.
Parece que esta cosa de beber no es un gran problema. Puedo ver que esto es cierto, ya que la mayoría de mis amigos no beben.
¿Te gustaría conseguir un grupo de amigos para comer algo?
Suena muy bien. Mándame un mensaje postéreo.
Kutztown Living, vecino a vecino.
Financiado con una donación a través de la tarjeta de control de licor de Pensilvania.
KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University. KUR Kutztown. Hey everyone, welcome back to KU Live. The time right now is about 2:40 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, Steve Maugeri. And finally, we have our next guest, who is very, interesting guest who's from a KU alum, graduated in 1992, and is calling it to us from Scotland, thousands of miles across the Atlantic. And his name is Kendall Emerson Ross, and he's here to just talk about what it's like in Scotland and with what's been going on regarding the possible secession of Scotland. So there's a lot to talk about there. So I'll just, Mr. Ross, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. We want to appreciate you for calling and, increasing our phone bill. Thank you very much.
I'm very honored to be on the show. I have a technical question first and foremost.
Shoot.
I have quite an echo going on in my phone, and I'm wondering if there's something we can adjust on that end.
Yeah, this is Mike, the producer here. Actually, you sound absolutely fine on our end. Some people, when we do international calls, notice that. All I can say is just try to ignore it as best as possible, because there's really nothing we can do on this end.
Fantastic.
But you sound fine.
Yeah, and can you hear us okay?
You can hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great. I'm just going to have to try to, deal with it. It's kind of like having a massive... Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you sound absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So I lost the echo, so that's fantastic.
Good.
Thanks, ancestors, or
That's
whoever
great.
was responsible for that.
Yeah,
I appreciate
the radio gods have spoken, and sometimes problems just solve themselves. That's great. Okay, well...
You just never know.
Great. All right, well, thank you again for coming on the show. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule.
Very welcome. It's an honor to give back to the university and also to share information with the world about sovereign movements in the world and how democratic electoral process can assist people who haven't had just representation in the past to create just representation for themselves in the future.
For sure. And we will indulge in that soon. First, we just would like to know, you're an alum. What made you want to move to Scotland?
Well, I came up in a Scottish, Irish-American family.
Oh.
And so ever since I was a wee bairn, as they say over here, a wee lad, I've known where I came from and who I came from, and I was very fortunate to know that. Not all Americans know that. Of course, not everyone and everywhere else in the world knows that either. However, I think it's very helpful to understand from whence you came, so you can be more present in the now and create healthy spaces in the future.
Oh, by all means, I would love to go, back to my roots. My family's from Italy. I would love to do that. But I'm curious. Scotland's a very extravagant and picturesque country to live in. What's it like out there? What's it like?
Well, I mean, the spirit of the land and the spirit of the people, they really weave together. And possibly you and other listeners know about Celtic knotwork and the artistry that's involved in that. And that's a visual, pictorial of a very spiritual connection and process of the connection of the people and the land, the ancient vibration of the land, and how it informs the people, and how the people then inform themselves about the magic of the land. And of course, I'm sure you're all aware to some point of magical stories of beyond the mist that come from the Highlands of Scotland and Ireland and all the Celtic nations.
Right.
About how this world interacts with the others. So it's a magical place to be, and it's also got a very counterbalancing other side, which is it's a place where it's crying out for a lot of healing and reclamation of our culture and our confidence, our esteem as individuals, as communities, as a culture of not only Scots, which is a very lowland thing, but also as Gaels or Gaelic-speaking people from the Highlands and the Western Islands. So there's a lot of cultural aspects to it. And then there's a big Norse influence to the north as well, in the Orkney Islands and the Shetland Islands. So Scotland is quite a cultural interaction of at least those three groups, not more. And then there's the ancient Picts that mix into that. So you have a very magical setting here. But I think because of the time, we might want to crack on and get into what the situation is going on here presently, politically, culturally, economically, financially, and certainly journalistically. Very important to talk about that.
For sure. So, okay, well, you're obviously ready for it. Well, with the recent issues regarding the possible secession, how do you believe that? What's been your firsthand observation of it? How's the general public handled all this?
Well, it's been a shaky start, and I think it's important to lay the historical framework of this to answer that question fairly and objectively. So you had the Stuart dynasty who were in power, that came into power circa 1600, James. And what happened is, this is a very quick history lesson. What happened there was basically the Stuarts were the only choice to be on the throne of what was then the Kingdom of England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and France. So because the Stuart dynasty was the only logical heir from all of the family lines involved, there was the automatic union of the crowns that occurred at that time. So all the countries were still separate, but the crowns were united. And and then later on, the Scottish Parliament started to develop. You also had a lot of tumultuous weirdness going on with the Stuart dynasty and the Cromwell years, and a lot of tension between the English and the Scots at the time, because the union of the crowns was a very tricky thing to navigate. So later on, before William and Mary come into power, 1789, I think, 1689, pardon me, the Stuarts abandoned the throne because of severe tensions between the Anglo-Saxon reality and the Scottish reality, and also under threat of being beheaded. And his grandfather had been beheaded. I think this was Charles II that abandoned the throne. So now you've got this vacuum. The Stuarts have abandoned the throne for their own safety. William and Mary come into power, and they start encroaching upon the agreement of the union of the crowns. And then this is what happens, and then this will be the end of the history lesson. What happens then is that there's a backdoor deal made with the Scottish Parliament, which was in full functioning ability at that time. This is 1707. And what happened was there was a backdoor bribery deal made with about 15 parliamentary members of the Scottish Parliament, between them and some powerful agents in Westminster. And we've heard of all of these deals before. It happens at a corporate level today. It happens on a lot of levels today. So this isn't any new news to anyone who studies history in any way. Now, after that deal was done, we were held accountable by Westminster. However, we had not even voted on it as a Scottish Parliament, as a sovereign Scottish Parliament. So that is what created the tension in this entire situation in the past. And there was intermittent rioting in Edinburgh for about 25 or 30 years following that backdoor deal that created the union as we know it today. So that's the backdrop, a conversation of what is going on here. And so there's been 300 years of, all right, we'll be patient, but now it's time to go forward. And Scotland can't do that, just from a purely objective view, and then I'll give you my personal view as well. But it's just, when you can look at the facts without the spin put on it by media companies that have vested interest in Scotland remaining in the United Kingdom, when you can look at all that stuff without the spin, it's very clear that Scotland would be much better off on their own, provide for themselves, which makes sense. Who better to choose to provide for oneself than the people that live in the region where the choices are being made? So there you have it. That's a little history lesson. I hope that helps to illuminate the situation.
You've cleared the fog on that. This is based on something that happened hundreds of years ago. Wow. And I do agree with you. I've read a lot about this, and it says that it actually would have been, people have been, economists have said that they Scotland could function as its own province because it's almost like a state in the United States. So I agree with you on that. And so I guess that answers. Go ahead.
If I can just quickly say, in fact, if you average the commentaries by very reputable international economists, the average statement is that Scotland would be ranked somewhere around 15 or 16th as far as the wealth of nations in the world. That's fairly good.
That's very good.
Economically, the viability, that's not in question. However, if you're going to be, just as an example, tuning into BBC One or BBC Two or even BBC Scotland, you're going to have to swim through a lot of spin on these stories and facts, which makes sense. They have vested interests.
For sure.
Fair enough. And you may have gotten some of these stories about the very intense bias of the BBC in reporting.
I'm an electronic media major with a focus in journalism. I know there's always going to be some people who take one side or another. I'm aware of that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it happens.
It's an entertainment business. Oh, please continue.
Yeah. So just to bring that current, so what's been going on now is the SNP has, what do we have, about 8 minutes? Okay, I'll have to speed this up. So what we've had there is the Scottish National Party started to come into power in '67. What I mean, starting to come into power, they started coming onto the scene in '67. And then as time carried on, and through the Thatcher years and all the other things, they started to get more representatives elected to seats of Parliament in Westminster. And they were starting to get the trust and the understanding of the people to see, like, wow, they really are fighting for us. And it's gotten to the point where people have realized in the Labour Party, because Scotland's been Labour quite intensely for a long time, that even people in the Labour Party have realized, wait a minute, the Scottish Nationalist Party is actually doing what our Labour Party used to do. So why don't we see, started having converts, especially in the past couple months of this campaign. So there's been a lot of people, there's been a huge reshuffling of loyalties and amongst various camps in the political arena of Scotland. And I think for a very healthy and just way. I think it's created this conversation and giving the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds, and the conversation has trickled down into every aspect of community. Walking up and down the street the past few weeks, you hear 16, 17-year-olds going, "Oh no, that's rubbish." I mean, you hear all these, and even we barons will be making offhand comments about the referendum vote. Everyone has been involved on every level, and the schools have been involved over the past couple of years. It's been a very healthy and empowering conversation for the people of Scotland, and it has revitalized an engagement in their thinking process, their cultural process, their socioeconomic process, and their process as individuals and what our self-esteem is as individuals in our groups, in our communities, and as a people in the country. It's been a fantastic thing to witness, and I've been here for about 5 years witnessing the build-up, so it's fascinating stuff. Go on, you have some questions for me.
I do. Yeah, Mike had told me that you right now are part of a grassroots campaign to revote due to controversy surrounding possible voter fraud. Just elaborate on that, if you may.
Well, that's certainly one of the aspects of the fallout after this. So I think it's important to remember that, one, the balloting process, which to me, in my mind, and also according to the Russians, of course, they have vested interest, and according to other international representatives who were witnessing the balloting process, I think everyone agrees it was quite archaic. I mean, paper ballots, and I'm not saying there is some hardcore evidence, and there are actual investigations going on in 10 different areas of Glasgow, one place in Dundee, and possibly in Clackmannanshire, which is in the lowlands in between Edinburgh and Glasgow, where there's enough evidence to warrant an investigation on voting fraud. Who knows how long that'll take or what will happen. But so I think everybody has come to an agreement that it's very archaic, and the ballot's not guarded from one point being transferred to the next and other things. It's just not up to international voting standards as far as democratic process goes. It's certainly not a fair democratic process. And I think it's wise to go down that road and challenge that and try to regain a revote to a point. I also think what's wise is to put energy into recreating another democratic referendum vote through all the legal avenues of possibility. Now, it's also legal to petition the vote, and there have been multiple petitions. Some of them are up to 100,000 signatures already that will be filed, and we have up to 6 weeks to file them, be filed in Westminster and also in Scottish Parliament and also with the National Police Force of Scotland. So there are a lot of things going on there. And that rally on Sunday is happening about wanting to get a revote. And I think a revote is wise. Who knows if it'll happen. The one on Saturday is simply voice of the people. And if we can talk again Saturday or Sunday or both, fantastic, because there will be probably close to 10,000 people at each of these rallies on Saturday and Sunday at Scottish Parliament. So it's quite the movement. People, it's just been amazing. There's so much more I could talk about and all the details of how empowering it has been to be crushed, kind of. Martin Luther King Jr. said, how long, not long, for truth crushed to earth will rise again. And that's certainly been the spirit of what we're calling the 45%. And also that was one of the most famous Jacobite uprisings against England in 1745. So there's an interesting correlation there. There was something else. Well, I'd like to plug our site that we're putting up, and also plug the crowdfunding link. It's not quite all intact and ready to announce yet. So if we can talk again this weekend, I'll plug it at that point in time, if that's okay.
I don't know. Mike, would we be able to possibly do that this weekend?
Yeah, we're definitely going to. I'm going to talk to Kendall on Thursday, and we're going to try to pull something off. If not, at the very least, we'll be promoting it all over our social media and podcasting venues of getting KUR out there.
Yeah, it'll be outsourcing all the way over to the United States. You'll get support from it's from almost before you know it, you'll get worldwide support. That's great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Ross. We appreciate you calling us all the way over from there to give us be our very own insider and our correspondent
Absolutely.
from Scotland. And we look
do I have 30 seconds or no? Are you up against?
You could, like 45 seconds.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll do it in 30. So, the aftermath. Right, the deal was Westminster says, we'll give you devolution maximum powers if you stay in the Union. That was the deal. So a lot of people, not enough people, switched from yes to no. Hence the 45 for yes, 55 no. Well, Westminster has missed all of their commitments on all the timeline to that promise, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to deliver anything. That's going to create some major issues, and that's another reason for the demand of the revote, because of the trickery involved, which is nothing new that we've seen from Westminster. That's all I wanted to say about that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ross. We appreciate it. Really
Thank you so much, Kendall.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Kutztown, woohoo! Scotland forever.
For sure.
Woo! Bye-bye.
Thank you. It's great to hear from an alum like that, and a very informative interview giving us some background information that dates for hundreds of years old on what's going on in Scotland. Very informative. Hopefully we can get him on the show sometime soon. Well, that was a very great show. Thank you for everyone who listened, and stay tuned next week for more KU Live. Have a nice day.
It's the top of the hour, and you're listening to the radio.